we are traveling to, Ghana, as I said. Um, we want to be able to talk about women that are promoting fashion, but also sustainability and preserving African craftsmanship. So today, like I said, it is time for us to go to Ghana. And we're meeting a woman who's proving African luxury belongs on the world's biggest fashion as well. We spoke about Met Gala, and I think there should be an African gala. Just my thinking. So let's spill some fashion tea, right? So when people think about luxury fashion, they often think, as I always said, about, Milan, Paris, London, or even New York. But here's something many people don't know. Africa's fashion industry is growing, like I always say, rapidly, and I'll keep repeating this in our fashion hot tea or fashion tea, whatever you want to call it. This is driven by a new generation of designers who are growing, and they're basically wanting to combine the African heritage and innovation and entrepreneurship. More African brands are giving or gaining international recognition while creating opportunities at home. So, one woman helping this drive is a lady that is in Accra, Ghana. Her name is Aisha Ayensu. So let us meet Aisha Ayensu. Aisha Ayensu didn't begin her career dreaming of becoming one of Africa's leading fashion designers. In fact, she studied psychology, but her passion for creativity eventually inspired her to launch Christie Brown. Unusual name. I thought she'd go for something, more um, Africa niche kind of. But anyway, a luxury fashion house named after her grandmother, and that's very interesting. A talented seamstress whose craftsmanship became the foundation of a brand. From the very beginning, Aisha had one mission to create, clothing that celebrates African heritage while meeting the highest standards of international luxury. Okay, so we now get to understand. Like I said at first, I was like, oh, that's a very Western name, but here we go. There's always history behind the name. So building Christie Brown, every Christie Brown collection tells a story. Traditional Ghanaian craftsmanship meets contemporary tailoring. Rich African textiles are combined, with elegant silhouettes. And the results? Clothing that feels proudly African while, appealing to women around the world. Over the years, Christy Brown has addressed celebrities, business leaders, and women looking for timeless elegance rooted in, African industry. So, or identity rather. So, more than beautiful clothes, what inspires me, she says, most about her clothes is that her success isn't her commitment to changing perceptions. For years, African fashion was often, viewed through a narrow lens. So today's designers are, proving that African fashion is innovative. I like that. Luxurious and globally competitive. So, that's a motto. So I would say kudos to her, like every other woman that we've been meeting in this um, you know, channel is, yeah, they are super women in my view. She's also creating employment opportunities, check, supporting skilled artisans and helping, preserve traditional craftsmanship for future generations, another check. So that's impact. So, this is why her story matters in fashion. So it isn't about, trends, it's really about culture and confidence. And also, you want to tell the world who you are without saying a word. So Aisha Ayensu has shown that African designers don't have to imitate global fashion houses. they can create their own path, and the world is paying attention. From a dream inspired by her grandmother, and I've got a couple of collections here, to building one of Africa's most respected luxury fashion brands. So Aisha Ayensu's journey reminds us that success begins with believing in your own story. She isn't just a designer that's just putting clothes out there. She's designing a legacy, and she's showing the world that luxury can be proudly African, with an African signature. So, I also wanted to share a bit of my story about, Ghana. And I remember when I was, I think in my early teens, my grandmother and my aunt were basically, they had a business doing, traditional clothes back in Soweto where we grew up. And I remember being surrounded by a lot of Ghanaian materials. My aunt used to source the materials out in Ghana, and I think Ghana with Ankara, and that's the first thing I used to. That's the first, I guess, impression that I found about African fashion. And my aunt, Auntie Minky, was always that. She's a slender, tall, beautiful African woman. And I think the next time around, I'll just show you. I'll share photos of her. So she and my grandmother were always sewing clothes and, designing wedding clothes for people. So we had, like I think I tell people in my channel, if you follow me, it's my family. I have a huge family, but one of the things that I was always proud of is the entrepreneurial heart that my family has, especially the women in my family. My grandma and my aunt, as I said, I knew fashion from seeing them putting together outfit, and obviously would be helping putting outfits out there for a wedding crew, or people, bridesmaids coming to fit their outfits in our dining room. It was always surrounded by material, and Ghanaian material, like I said, was always, my aunt traveled throughout Africa during those that period to just source material, and Ghana was her drive. So I've learned a lot from watching those women, those two women in particular. So I want to thank you, Ghana, for being my inspiration for wearing and being proud of African attire. So, my people, that was a piece of my history that I wanted to share with you. Um, and thank you so much for joining me for another episode. I've kept this episode short a bit today, about fashion hot tea. That's what it is. So if you enjoyed today's story, please like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who loves fashion and culture and inspiring African women. Tell me in the comments which African women designers would be you'd like me to feature in the next episode. I'm your fashion host, Tumi. Our fashion hot tea, where the world follows trends and we discover them first. So, see you next Sunday. Thank you very much. Take care. Love you for watching. Bye.